Margaret stood in the center of her living room, staring at the half-empty bookshelves, the bare walls where framed memories once hung. The silence pressed against her like a heavy fog, thick and inescapable. After 32 years of marriage, she never imagined she would be divorced at 60, never imagined she would be packing up the life she built and moving into something smaller, something less permanent. Her fingers brushed against the wooden surface of the dining table, the same one where she had hosted holiday dinners, where she had sat across from Greg for decades. That table had held laughter, arguments, and quiet breakfasts that turned colder with time. Now it was just another piece of furniture she had to decide whether to keep or let go. The word divorce echoed in her mind like an unfamiliar song she had yet to learn the lyrics to. Was this really her life now? A new phase, one she hadn't asked for. She sighed, picking up a cardboard box marked Memories. Inside, she found their wedding album, her heart tightening at the sight of their younger selves, smiling, hopeful, unaware of what was to come. She flipped through the pages, lingering on the edges of a life that had slowly unraveled. At the bottom of the box, something unexpected. A black leather case. She hadn't seen it in years. Slowly she unzipped it, revealing the warm, honey-colored wood of her old guitar. The one she used to play before life got in the way. Before marriage, before kids, before she convinced herself that her dreams weren't as important as everyone else's. She traced her fingers over the strings, pressing down gently. The sound was rusty, unfamiliar, but it stirred something inside her. A knock on the door pulled her out of her thoughts. Ellen, her best friend, stepped inside, her sharp eyes scanning the room. Jesus, Margaret. Your house looks like a damn museum someone just raided. Margaret let out a short laugh, the first real one in days. Well, that's divorce for you. It takes everything and leaves you with boxes. And Ellen folded her arms. Come to dance class with me tomorrow. It's a group for people over 60. Nothing serious. Just some fun, good music, and no pressure. Margaret almost laughed at the idea. Dancing? Now? She hadn't danced in years. Not since Greg stopped wanting to dance with her. But something about the way Ellen said it, so matter-of-fact, so unbothered by the past, made her pause. I don't know, Elle. Look, you can sit here in your half-empty house feeling sorry for yourself, or you can put on some shoes and remember that your life isn't over just because your marriage is. Margaret swallowed. Divorce had taken so much already. Did she really want to give it her joy, too? She glanced back at the guitar, then at the boxes, then at her best friend. Maybe she wasn't ready to dance just yet. And the studio smelled of polished wood and a hint of lavender. The kind of place that had seen countless hesitant steps and nervous first attempts. Margaret stood at the entrance, gripping her purse as if it might anchor her to the ground. This is ridiculous, she whispered. I should leave. But before she could turn around, Ellen looped her arm through hers and pulled her inside. Nope, you're here now. No backing out. Margaret swallowed hard as she took in the scene. Men and women around her age, some older, some younger, all dressed comfortably, chatting and laughing. They moved with an ease that made her painfully aware of how stiff she felt, how foreign this all was. Then she saw the couples. The way they swayed together, some moving as if they had been doing this for decades. Her chest tightened. Greg never wanted to dance. Not at weddings, not at home, not when she begged him to. Dancing is for young people, he used to say. And, like so many other things, she had let that dream of hers shrink until it disappeared. All right, everyone, let's get started. A man in his 60s, tall with salt and pepper hair, clapped his hands. We've got some new faces today. Welcome, welcome. His gaze landed on Margaret, and he smiled. I'm Christopher. First time? Margaret hesitated, then nodded. Well, the good news is, we're all beginners here at something. His voice was warm, reassuring. Let's start with something simple. The music began, a soft, melodic rhythm that urged movement. Ellen nudged her. Come on, just one step at a time. Margaret forced her feet to move, slow, hesitant. She felt foolish, her movements stiff and unnatural. Her mind was screaming at her to stop, to sit down, to disappear. Then, Christopher appeared in front of her, offering his hand. "Mind if I cut in?" Margaret almost laughed. "You say that like I have any moves to cut into." He chuckled. "Let's start with the basics. Step here, then here. See? You're already dancing." She wasn't sure if it was his voice, the music, or the way he made it seem so effortless, but something inside her loosened. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about Greg. For the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about what she had lost. For the first time in years, she was just here. And for now, that was enough. Margaret had always believed that control was the key to stability. Keep things in order, follow the rules, make sacrifices. Wasn't that what a good marriage required? But here, in this dance studio, control was the very thing holding her back. Christopher's hand was steady on hers, his voice guiding her through each step. "Relax," he said gently. "Dancing isn't about forcing the next move. It's about trusting the rhythm to carry you." Trust. That word made her throat tighten. She had trusted Greg. She had trusted that love meant forever. And yet, here she was, learning to dance with a stranger because the man she had once trusted had left her with nothing but divorce papers and a hollow house. She exhaled, willing herself to focus. One step, then another. Christopher chuckled. "You're thinking too much." "Old habit," she admitted. "Then let's break it." He spun her just slightly, a simple movement, but it caught her off guard. A small gasp escaped her lips. She had let go, just for a second. When she landed back in place, something shifted inside her. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel stuck. Life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It simply moves forward. The choice is yours to follow or stay behind. The dance class ended, but the warmth in Margaret's chest lingered. Ellen looped an arm through hers as they stepped outside. "See? Told you it wouldn't kill you." Margaret shook her head, laughing softly. "You just enjoy being right." "Well, that too," Ellen grinned. "You coming back next week?" Margaret hesitated. Habit told her to decline, to retreat back into the safety of her routine. But safety had also meant stagnation. And wasn't that the very thing she was trying to escape? "I think I will." "Good." Ellen squeezed her arm. "You deserve this, you know." Margaret wasn't sure what she deserved anymore, but she knew what she wanted, to feel alive again. The following days passed in a slow rhythm of self-discovery. She unpacked in her new apartment, letting go of things she once thought she needed. She dusted off her old guitar, her fingers fumbling over chords that used to come easily. One night, as she strummed idly, a memory surfaced, her younger self, sitting in a tiny apartment, playing music simply for the joy of it, before marriage. Before responsibility overshadowed passion, the realization hit her like a quiet storm. Somewhere along the way, she had stopped doing things for herself. The next time she went to dance class, she wasn't just going through the motions, she was present, open, willing, and when Christopher led her into a light-hearted spin, something unexpected happened. She laughed. Not the polite, restrained laughter she had learned to perfect over the years, but real, unfiltered joy. The sound startled her. When had she last laughed like that? Christopher smiled. "You're getting it now." Margaret met his gaze, something new flickering behind her eyes. Maybe she was. Divorce didn't mean the end of love. It only meant she had to learn how to love herself first. Margaret found herself lingering after dance class more often. Sometimes she stayed just to watch how bodies moved in sync, how laughter filled the space like a familiar song. Other times she found herself talking to Christopher. Their conversations started small, music, travel, the oddities of aging, but they grew into something deeper. One evening, after class, they stepped outside together. The air was cool, tinged with the scent of rain. "Can I ask you something?" Christopher said, his tone casual but eyes keen. "Of course. Why did you start coming here?" Margaret considered the question. "Because I was tired of being alone." Christopher tilted his head. "Are you?" The honesty in his voice startled her. No one had asked her that before, not in a way that made her think about the answer. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Loneliness is strange. Sometimes it's loud, like silence that echoes too much. Other times, it just lingers in the background, like a shadow. He nodded, as if he understood more than she expected. And now? She smiled, though the answer felt fragile on her lips. Now, it's quieter. The conversation settled between them, unspoken truths hanging in the air. Christopher leaned against the railing. I was married for 30 years, he said. We built a life, raised kids, did everything we were supposed to. And then one day she looked at me and said she wanted something different. Margaret's stomach tightened. I'm sorry, he shrugged, though there was no bitterness in it. It took me a long time to stop looking for the why. Some things don't come with explanations. They just are. She exhaled slowly. Divorce forces you to rewrite the rules, doesn't it? It does, he agreed. But that doesn't mean you stop playing. Margaret glanced at him then, taking in the quiet confidence in his expression. She had spent months fearing the unknown, believing that life after divorce meant uncertainty, loneliness, and longing. But maybe it also meant freedom. Maybe it meant she could choose. Life doesn't take permission before it changes. But you get to decide what comes next. Margaret's days took on a new rhythm. She filled them with small joys, playing her guitar, rediscovering old books, reconnecting with friends she had let slip away over the years. She even booked a weekend trip to a coastal town, something she had always dreamed of but never prioritized. And she kept dancing. Each week she showed up, not just to learn steps, but to learn herself again. One evening, Christopher invited her for coffee after class. She hesitated for a split second, old fears creeping in. Was this too soon? Was she ready? But then she thought about all the things she had denied herself before, how she had made choices based on what others needed, what others expected. Not this time. She nodded. I'd like that. At the cafe, they talked for hours. About books, music, the absurdity of dating apps at their age. Margaret laughed so hard her sides ached, and for the first time in years, she felt light. On the walk back, Christopher paused outside the dance studio. Can I tell you something? She met his gaze, heart steady but open. I like who you're becoming, he said simply. Not the woman you were before, but the one you are now. Margaret swallowed hard. It was a strange thing, being seen, not for her past, not for her regrets, but for who she was in this moment. She had spent so long trying to reclaim what was lost. But maybe she didn't have to. Maybe she was becoming something new. As she stepped into the night, she realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore. Sometimes, the door you thought was closed forever is the one that leads you home. Margaret stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the fabric of her dress. Soft music played from her old radio, the kind of song that made her want to sway. It had been a long time since she had dressed for herself. No occasion, no one to impress, just a quiet decision to feel good in her own skin. Tonight wasn't a grand event, just a simple dinner with Christopher. Nothing more, nothing less. And yet, as she caught her own reflection, she realized something had shifted. She looked happy. Not the forced, practiced kind of happiness she had worn in the final years of her marriage. Not the survival mode she had lived in after the divorce, but a quiet, settled happiness. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. When she opened it, Christopher stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. Thought you might need one, he said with a grin. She laughed, stepping aside to let him in. They sat on the couch, talking like they always did, about nothing and everything. At one point, Christopher leaned back, studying her. Do you ever think about what life would have been like if things hadn't changed? Margaret exhaled, considering the question. Once, she had obsessed over it. She had replayed every moment of her marriage, every fight, every compromise, every time she had swallowed her own needs for the sake of peace. But now the past felt like a story she had once lived, not a prison she was trapped in. Sometimes, she admitted, but not with regret. Christopher nodded, understanding. Divorce is strange, isn't it? She smiled. It is. It breaks you, but it also frees you. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the weight of the past no longer heavy between them. Eventually, Christopher stood. Come on, he said, offering his hand. She raised an eyebrow. Where? He gestured to the open space in her living room. "Dance with me," Margaret chuckled. "There's no music." He shrugged. "We don't need it." And so she placed her hand in his, letting him lead. The steps were familiar now. Not perfect, not rehearsed, just effortless. She closed her eyes, feeling the movement, the quiet laughter, the steady presence of someone who saw her, not as a woman who had been left, not as someone rebuilding from divorce, but simply as herself. And in that moment she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. Some endings are not failures, they are invitations to begin again.